This lesson is going to focus on the lymphatic system. It's one that's often overlooked, but incredibly important to our everyday life. So the lymphatic system, it works very closely with the cardiovascular system. It's going to take fluids that have escaped out of the blood vessels and put them back into circulation. But before they do that, they also make sure that there's no infectious agents in there, no cancerous agents in that fluid before they put it back into our bloodstream. So this is going to have many different organs associated with it, and it's going to have a vessel system, just like our cardiovascular system. Your organs and your cells are often surrounded by interstitial fluid. It's the way that our body facilitates moving nutrients from our blood vessels into the cells and waste from the cell back into the bloodstream. Now, sometimes our blood vessels will end up leaking extra plasma, and that's going to fill the interstitial fluid space. Well, we don't want too much fluid leaving our blood vessels because then we don't have a high enough volume to be able to support healthy perfusion. So we have to have a system that puts all that fluid back into our bloodstream. If we don't, we have something called edema, which is an excessive fluid accumulation in our tissues, and it looks like a swelling almost. And it's going to make it harder for us to get nutrients and waste where they need to go, because everything in your body, as far as nutrients and moving around, often moves through diffusion. So if you have more space that you have to diffuse across, it's going to take longer for nutrients to get there. Now, just like your cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system has its own network of vessels. These are different vessels than your blood vessels, so they have their own separate network. They're going to be going all over the body, picking up extra interstitial fluid, filtering it, and returning it to the bloodstream itself. It's a one-way system, just like your circulatory system. But the thing is, your lymph system has no pump. So anytime that fluid moves, it's because of your own body's movement. So the contraction of your muscles around the lymph vessels, or the beating of the circulatory system itself and the movement of the blood causes the lymph to move forward in its vessels as well. And lymph is just the clear liquid that's inside our lymphatic vessels. It's that interstitial fluid that we've taken into the lymph vessels. Now, these vessels are very, very thin, often only one cell thick, and that's going to allow material to move in and out much easier. If you had really thick walls, it would take a long time for material to move in and out of those vessels. Potentially, the material couldn't move at all if it was thick enough. They also have one-way valves, kind of like those veins that we talked about. This way, the liquid is allowed in and it's allowed to move in one direction, but it can't go backwards in those vessels. And it's all based off of pressure. Where is there higher pressure? If there's higher pressure outside of the vessels, then that interstitial fluid is forced into the lymph vessels, and it can then be filtered around. If the pressure is higher inside the vessels, so you've got pressure pushing outward on the vessels, then those valves close up and prevent liquid from going in the opposite direction, and it prevents liquid from leaving the vessels. You've probably heard of your lymph nodes before, and these are dispersed throughout your entire vascular system for the lymph vessels at least. And they just look like areas of thicker little circles that are bulging out of the vessels. And what these are areas where all the lymph will empty into the node, and it's going to be filtered. So the key job of our lymph nodes is to filter the lymph. It's the only place where it is filtered. We're going to talk about a bunch of other lymph organs. They do not filter any of the lymph that's coming in. They only do their own particular job. And inside these lymph nodes, are numerous macrophages. These are white blood cells that are going around and eating foreign invaders like bacteria or viruses or other debris. We're also looking for cancer cells that may have accidentally gotten into your lymph or your bloodstream. We want to stop those cancer cells from getting to a different part of your body and spreading the cancer around. Your lymph nodes can often become swollen or full because of a high volume of debris or macrophages in there. Usually, it indicates that you may have an ongoing infection that you're trying to fight off, especially if that's happening in your throat area. So as I said, our lymph vessels are going to be looking for cancer as well, especially our lymph nodes. They're going to be filtering out any stray cells that have broken off of a tumor and are now in your lymph or your blood vessels, and they're traveling around your body. From here, it's kind of like a superhighway. They can then get to any part of your body. So if we don't have a way of stopping the cancer cells, then you can end up with what's called metastasis, or the cancer spreading to a separate part of your body. Now, after we are in the capillaries, the lymph is going to drain into collecting ducts, and these are going to return the fluid back into the heart itself. So we have these periodic collecting ducts that are going to capture all the lymph and then put it back into the circulation of our cardiovascular system. And remember, all of this movement of the fluid is not occurring because the lymph has its own pump, but because it's actually being moved by our muscular contractions, our breaths, our blood moving through our veins, all of that stuff. And we have a bunch of other lymph organs, and they're here to be kind of supporters of the immune system. They're areas where we have a lot of immune cells that are going to be able to protect your body and get rid of any foreign invaders. And they'll have what's called lymphocytes, or a certain type of white blood cell, inside these particular organs. So let's look at all of these one at a time. The spleen is one that filters and cleanses the blood itself. So our red blood cells are sent here to be recycled. We break them down, keep the iron, and then we use that to build back up new red blood cells. So this particular organ, if it's ever damaged, can cause a lot of internal bleeding because it has a lot of red blood cells in there. Now, we don't filter lymph in this particular organ. We filter our blood, but we also have a lot of white blood cells that are making sure we don't have any bacteria or viruses inside our circulating fluids. The thymus gland is located in your chest, in that mediastinum area, and it's going to be above the heart and in between the lungs. And this gland is mostly there to produce hormones that help your immune system function properly. It helps your body recognize what are cells that belong to your own body and what are foreign invaders. So as a result, this tends to be active more often in childhood. Once you've learned your own body cells, you don't really need to continue to learn your own body cells because our immune system has a memory. You have tonsils on either side of the inside of your throat, and this is going to trap any bacteria that we ingest or inhale. So you're eating food and it's covered in bacteria, and these tonsils can then collect it. However, if they tend to get very filled up with bacteria and white blood cells that are fighting off those bacteria, they can look inflamed or swollen. And that can cause throat irritation and just be really uncomfortable. So sometimes you can have what's called a tonsillectomy. And this is where your tonsils will be surgically removed. It used to be done really frequently. Basically, if any kid had swollen tonsils, they would take you in, cut out your tonsils, and you would be done. But now we've learned that that's probably not a good thing, because There is a function to your tonsils. It's protecting your body from foreign invaders. So now we only do these tonsillectomies when you have a kid who's chronically getting tonsillitis, chronic tonsil infections. We have Peyer's patches, and these are located in the intestine, particularly the small intestine. They are found inside the membrane that surrounds and protects your intestines. And there's about 30 to 40 Peyer's patches per person. You tend to have a higher number in your youth, and then it'll get lower as you get older. And these are there to look at what you're eating. So they're taking in foreign material and helping your immune system recognize, okay, this is food, not a foreign invader that we have to attack. So it helps us with what's called oral immune tolerance, teaching your body that certain signals should not be attacked. And then the last one is the appendix. A lot of people know this one because we have that dreaded appendicitis where your appendix can burst and then you need to be rushed into surgery. It's a really small organ, about 3 to 4 inches long, in the lower right quadrant of your abdomen, right in this area, and it sticks out from your large intestine. Now, we have ideas of what its function may be, however, we don't know 100% that that's its job. Some people believe that it stores good bacteria, so that way if we ever have an imbalance in our intestines, that good bacteria can be taken out of the appendix and put back into our gut and help us function normally again. Other thoughts are that it's a vestigial organ, that it used to be part of the digestive system of one of our ancient ancestor organisms, and now as we've evolved, we no longer need it, so it's becoming smaller and smaller over time. But appendicitis is where that appendix becomes infected or impacted with material, and it can be really painful, and then it can actually end up rupturing, and you'll need to have surgery to get that closed up because it's essentially opening up your whatever's inside your intestines to leak out into your body cavity itself. So it's not a fun one, and you definitely need to get that corrected with surgery. So that's all I have for you guys. Let me know if you have questions.